Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. I am Mike Musto, your host, together with Ryan Douthit of Driving Sports TV. Now,
Hey.
together, we're going to talk about pickup trucks. We're going to talk about all manner of pickup trucks. Ryan has been driving every single pickup truck on the planet. But first, I want to get into what the pickup truck is and how it's kind of morphed over the years, because it went from what was generally considered a work vehicle to now Luxo boxes that, with every type of feature, with every type of configuration. And Ryan, I'm just going to go through really quick, just some configurations really quick, okay?
They're fun lifestyle vehicles now, by the way.
Yes.
Lifestyle vehicles.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Well, and you're absolutely right. So here's the thing. You could get a regular or a standard cab, an extended cab, a double cab, a crew cab, whatever nomenclature companies are putting on cab sizes these days. They make up their own. You can get two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, a standard bed, a long bed, a short bed, and you could get any trim model from base contractor all the way up to it looks better than my living room. Now,
and costs more than your living room.
And costs more than you. Yeah. So, you drive all of these trucks. You've driven all the midsize, you drive all the full-size trucks, you drive all these things. First, let's talk about the actual size, because, last week Ryan was down here when we were filming our new show, Tested for Hemmings, and Ryan just picked up a beautiful Ford Ranger Raptor. It was an amazing truck. I was fortunate enough to drive it. It really is a spectacular machine. However, we were both commenting on the fact that the Ranger is now the size of an F-150 from the 90s.
Yeah.
And so talk about that a little bit, Ryan, and what you've seen over the last 20 years or so of these vehicles just getting massive and huge and bulbous.
Well, I think a lot of it, okay, so the F-150 kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it started, and they added more and more and more power. And kind of like, if you go back to like, when was the last time that they discontinued the Ranger? That was probably in the early aughts, somewhere around there, where the Ranger just went away. Ford just said, you know what, there's not that much of a price difference between the mid and the F-150s, so we'll just sell everybody F-150s. And that worked for them for a certain amount of time. But eventually, people, as the trucks got bigger and bigger and bigger, why they got bigger, it's a weird combination of government regulations, what people want. People just were buying the bigger, more powerful, more capable trucks without having to go up to like an F-350 or one of the like the big, actual big trade trucks. But then as the full-size trucks started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that kind of opened up the door for mid-sizes to come back kind of at the size of what the old full-size quarter tons were. And so, but when they came back, it was with a caveat, and that was the fact that, whereas before you could get a mid-size truck in pretty much any, like you were saying, any bed and cab configuration. These days, like most of them, now there's an exception, the Toyota you can get in some variety, and the Ford you can get in some variety, but for the most part, mid-size trucks are all crew cab, short bed. That's it, because they're lifestyle trucks. If you want a work truck, you're going to get an F-150 or a Silverado or possibly a Ram 1500.
Yeah.
So you have options there in those larger truck sizes. But if you're going at mid-size, all the marketing, all the options, all the pricing is geared around the lifestyle stuff. And nothing, I think, says lifestyle pickup like a Raptor does. Because they throw out, even though it has a decent payload, they throw out some of the towing capability, because instead they go to these like really fancy Fox shocks with remote reservoirs, programmable, so you can set your drive modes, and it'll detect that you're launched in the air and you're about to land a jump. It'll
flight mode
it up because it has like an air mode built in. It's like, it just blows my mind, the stuff that they're throwing into these trucks. And I've had some comments on the video that I posted of the Ranger Raptor, because I took it up to this ridge road where I was just blasting through. And one guy was commenting that he's owned the Bronco Raptor and an F-150 Raptor, and he now owns the Ranger Raptor. And he's like, of the three, that is the best for off-road running. It is like, Ford has basically kept moving the bar. And the funny thing is, like, to this day, people are still like, oh, the Colorado's better, or this is that better. But it's like, I mean, I've driven all of them. Nothing touches
Yeah.
the Raptor Ranger. Like Ford basically, you know what? What's the Dodge thing? I mean, it's an old joke, and I'm sure it's not serious, but I'm going to say it.
Sure.
They do a line of Coke, and they put a Hellcat motor into the next
Sure.
car. Like, what is that car? Well, we'll throw a Hellcat into it.
Right.
It's the absurdity. I kind of get that same feeling with Ford and Raptor. It's like if they can Raptor
Yeah.
it, they will, but they don't go halfway. They do all of it. It's like, yes, this is we're going to destroy the space. And people are still like, well, I don't know. It's a Ford.
Well, let me ask
so
you
you
this,
still end
because
up with that kind of, you still have those Colts, the Chevy Colts, the Ram Colt, and the Ford Colt.
Yeah, of course. What percentage of pickup trucks now, as compared to say 25 years ago? All right, 25 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, for those that don't realize that, that's essentially 1999. You know what I mean? So may not seem like it, but that's what it is. Okay. But what percentage of pickup trucks now, as compared to then, you think are bought for pure lifestyle, as opposed to what pickup trucks were meant to do, which is work vehicles? Do you think
I think a
it's
lot of trucks.
85%?
Well, see, the problem is that
high?
the work trucks are bought in larger quantities. So, like, the F-150 is the best-selling
fleet
truck
services
in the world.
Yeah,
because the fleet services, that's always going to throw the numbers.
Yeah,
like the U.S. government will buy like 500,000 Ford F-150s, and so boom, most trucks are still work trucks, especially when you're talking in the larger sizes. I think that number is definitely about 85%, though. If you're looking at like midsize is just it's a fun truck category because. The first.
But categorize midsize though. So midsize, are you talking Ranger? Are you talking Dakota? Are you talking? I mean, Dakota's not a thing
anymore. But yeah.
But I mean, but things like that. Because what else?
So a midsize
are there small trucks?
Yeah, kind of. Any of the new unibodies would be the Maverick, the Santa Fe. The upcoming Dakota, those type of trucks.
Is that midline?
No, Ridgeline's actually a midsize. It's a midsize. It's the only midsize unibody truck. And every time I call it a unibody, I always get the comments, that's not a unibody, because if you take the body off the frame, it's not. It's like, you know what? Honda calls it a unibody. So therefore,
right.
Honda in their press release in the first paragraph says unibody pickup. I can call it a unibody pickup. Anyway, so I know it blurs the line, but yeah, no, the Ridgeline is definitely a mid-size. It has the capacity and the size and the bed and all that kind of stuff to qualify for a mid-size. I used to own a Maverick, and the Maverick is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, that's 90% of what mid-size buyers need for a truck. So mid-size, that's Chevy Colorado. That's Ford Ranger. Ram doesn't currently have a midsize because they just have the 1500 is what they have in that space, and then the Toyota Tacoma. Those are that's 90% of the market, 99% of the market right there. I mean, I only say 90 because there's also like the Rivian R1T and all these other
right.
We're not going to get into those.
No,
Bollinger, they still technically make trucks, I think.
Well, I mean, I always look at it, and I think you are so dead on when pickup trucks now have morphed into pure lifestyle vehicles, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know a ton of people, I'm sure you do too, who bought these trucks. Nothing has ever gone into the bed, and it's like if they go to Home Depot and they buy mulch, they love to say, there's a bunch of mulch.
I will say one of the first things I picked up with my Raptor was 6 bags of soil for my wife's garden.
Right, but so here's the thing. An SUV will do exactly the same thing. And this is a discussion that Ryan and I were having a couple of weeks ago because, with a pickup truck, unless you have a cap on it, all your stuff is exposed. Things can get taken out of the bed. There could be theft involved and stuff like that. So I always wonder what makes the pickup truck buyer, the enthusiast pickup truck buyer, a buyer as opposed to going for an SUV that does essentially the same thing? Is it because they want?
I think a lot of it is. Yeah, I think what I see around here, because I live in the country, I see a lot of people with pickups, with motorbikes in their pickups on the weekends.
Sure.
Which you can't throw into an SUV.
Totally makes sense.
You can get a Carrier, but they're a hassle.
Yeah.
Or cords of firewood loaded up in the back. This is all
Yep.
stuff you don't really want to throw into an SUV. And yeah, granted, I mean, these aren't typically Raptors running around doing this. Although
Sure.
I do see like a full-size Raptor with motorbikes in the back or
Yeah.
a quad parked up. You ever see those double-decker quad
Oh
things on
yeah.
the
There's
back of
there's one down the
trucks?
street from me. It's crazy.
Like,
Yeah.
like okay.
Yeah.
I mean, every
Yeah.
time I see it, I think like, are you tempted to Dukes of Hazard that thing every time you're like loading it? Because it
Dude,
just,
I look at those things and I go, that has to be the most precarious thing in the world to
I
load.
know,
Because
right?
because essentially you're going up the tailgate into the bed and then essentially
Up
parking it on the roof
on top of the cab, yeah.
on
It's just
top of
like,
the cab. And I'm
what?
like, that can't be stable. Like there's
Yeah,
nothing there that says that looks right, you
no,
know?
but it works, I guess. You
Yeah,
don't have to buy an extra device or carrier. You
trailer or
can
whatever.
tow it. You can trailer. Anyway, we're getting off topic, but yeah,
Yeah,
so I do see people using the beds for things,
yeah,
but I think that a lot of that could be replaced with a trailer or like you can put a motorbike carrier on the back of
sure.
of an SUV if you want to. I have one of those.
Yeah,
They're just kind of hassle because you got to get them out, got to
yeah, that
mount
pain in
it.
the ass. Yeah,
And then you get there and you can't open up your gate because your motorbike thing's in the
yeah,
way. So take
right,
that off. It's
right.
comes some extra steps. So I mean, I have a bunch of electric bikes. I like to throw them into the back of the Raptor. I
Yeah,
have a ramp. You just ramp it up. It's pretty nice
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
I do a lot of maintenance on the off-road courses that I have. I
sure.
throw equipment in the back. Tires. I move tires all the time. It's like one of those like describe your job badly things. It would be like I move tires from one location to another location. I put them on
Yeah.
a car, I take them off a car, and I move them. It's like that doesn't say anything about video. It's like yeah, but I feel like I move a lot of tires. Like why? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, I always find it interesting because then you get into um the different configurations, right? You're talking
Mhm.
about the regular cab or the extended cab, the crew cab, the double cabs,
Yep.
and all these different things. And what we're seeing is that generally now, where it used to be, you would have the one car in the family, or you might have a two-car family, right? And you would have your
Mhm.
sedan and then you would have your SUV. Now it's
Yep.
almost turning into you have your SUV and you have your pickup truck,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
that's a great two up. And very often people have an older pickup truck if it's their second vehicle and
Sure.
not one that they're riding. And that's I think what a lot of people are looking at, like these mid-sized trucks, is that they do kind of replace the family station wagon to a certain capacity.
Hmm.
Because if you have a tonneau cover or something in the back, you can just throw all your luggage in the back there and you have plenty of room. I have two teenagers. They fit fine in the back of my Raptor. Now, granted,
Yeah.
my teens are not particularly large children, but
Right.
so your mileage may vary, but in my case, they fit fine in the Raptor. There's no big
Right.
deal at all. So it kind of, in our way, it's actually our larger vehicle because my wife dailies a Subaru Crosstrek, which has
Yep.
less room in the second row. So it's actually our bigger option.
Huh.
Yeah, but so the kids will usually want to go in the Raptor if we have a choice. I do have a Land Cruiser on order, one of the brand new Land Cruisers. So
Yep.
they've already driven. I have a press version right now, which is a
Yeah.
base trim, which isn't anyway. But the fact is that they love that one because there's so much room on the inside compared to even the Raptor. So obviously, if you're going to compare midsize to midsize, an
Yeah.
SUV is always going to be a better choice for a family. But I think that a lot of these new midsize trucks, because they've gotten big enough and luxurious enough, you're really not taking a penalty if it's your one vehicle. And you
Right.
can always, well, the one thing that I always hate to do is borrow somebody's truck. But if you don't own a truck, you will find yourself at some point needing a truck.
Well, you know what? It's very interesting because that's, I'm going to be in the next 6, 7 months. I'm going to be moving, right? And
Yeah, I'm not driving down, so you can't borrow my truck. Sorry, Mike.
no, 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 no. But I have thought about buying a pickup truck,
Yeah,
but buying a used pickup truck and then selling it when I'm done, right?
yeah,
To do my move
absolutely.
and everything.
Mhm.
Because, and it's interesting. And there's still out there. You could still buy old pickup trucks. They don't have to be pretty, but they do have to be
Yeah,
functional and have to run right.
correct.
So from that perspective, and to your point, going to Lowe's, going to Home Depot, throwing stuff in the back that is going to muck up the back of your SUV,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily want to do that.
I mean, even
Um,
bags of mulch can be a little gross sometimes. So
oh, sure.
truck
No,
bed.
you're absolutely right. And I think that, it's funny though, because I look at stuff and you had sent me a photo the other day just of the new Ram Rebel interior, I think it was.
Yeah,
And it's gorgeous. Like
it's
it
a party.
rivals you look in that thing, you're like, that's okay. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, but it's kind of a lot like, can you imagine living in that thing? I don't know. It's It has so much going on. It's for those who don't know, the interior of the Ram Rebel 1500 is just so many angles. It's a massive screen.
It's
It
a
has like
carnival ride, man.
faux carbon fiber everywhere. And it's just
Yeah.
like, it kind of reminds me, oh, what was it? Those old boom boxes. There was a point where boom boxes, they couldn't make any more progress on the design of them,
Right.
like on the actual
You
function.
can only put so many
They just started
equalizers
like
and
adding colors and carbon and all this other
yeah.
ridiculous stuff. And you're like, that's actually kind of cool. I know it doesn't make anything better, but I
But I
kind of
want
want
it.
it.
Yeah. Well, it's really I look at all the pickup trucks and it's I'd
Mhm.
like to know the stats. I don't know if you know these, but how many households in America have pickup trucks?
Jeez, that's I
Because
don't
I
have
mean,
the
you look
stats on that.
around
No.
and I like if I go by just my friends,
Mhm.
uh if I take 10 friends, I bet 30% have pickup trucks.
In my neighborhood, I'm just counting
You're in the country.
house. Yeah, I'm in the country. At least 90% have trucks.
Wow.
At least.
That's huge.
And because
Yeah.
I think that the person right down the street there doesn't have a truck. The person right over there actually has a Subaru Baja, counts as a truck.
It does. Well, that's another thing, and I'm going to jump back to the Maverick really quick because
Yeah,
you had a Maverick when they first came out, and I know you really enjoyed that truck.
great truck. Yeah.
Um, that I look at that and I go, you know what? That's 90% of the truck that everybody needs. I think it has was it a 5 foot bed, 5.5 foot bed, something like that?
It's about 5.5 foot. That's most of these beds. Breaking news, though, it has been spotted of Ford testing a hybrid all-wheel drive version of the Maverick for next year. Hybrid all-wheel drive. So they've had all-wheel drive with a turbo, and they've had hybrid front-wheel
Hybrid,
drive only. They've
right?
never had hybrid with all-wheel drive. I think that one's going to sell like
Like
mad. In fact,
crazy.
probably people will be trading in their Mavericks to get the
Yeah.
hybrid Maverick.
Well,
It's like,
you know
why
what?
did you have that?
Well, when it comes to that size, though, it's funny because the hybrid, or not the hybrid, but if you got a Maverick with all-wheel drive, right, and you took the Maverick on your off-road course, right,
Yes, yes, I did. Yeah. Yeah.
and did it do 85,
It did. It
90%?
did. It did great. And the thing is that they now make the Tremor version, which is even more capable with a better rear drive unit than the one that I
Yeah,
had. And the one I had just had used brake vectoring to shift
sure.
power around. It was as good as a Subaru, basically. And Subarus
Okay.
are pretty good off road, so
Yeah.
it was above fine, I would say. It was
Okay.
good. It was definitely good. Not great, but definitely good. A solid good.
But would you say for what 90% of the people do, like
Oh yeah.
going on
For what
your
real
fire
people
road or
fire roads,
camping?
there's not a fire road it can't drive down, basically. It's only when you get into articulation and clearances that you start to have issues. But most people would turn around at that point anyway. You're not going to take a Maverick
Gotcha.
out in those conditions.
Okay.
If that's Bronco territory or Raptor territory, actually.
Or rapid, yeah. Well, that's okay. So here's another question for you. We're
Mhm.
talking about like you have the Raptor and you just did the ZR2, the Bison with
Yep. And the Gladiator. We don't have a video out on
and
it
the
yet, but
Gladiator.
we filmed with the Gladiator. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think that there is I don't know if the term shelf life is correct, but
Mm.
I think when Ford first came out with the first generation Raptor, people thought it was going to be a fad. But then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it stuck around and it's still sticking
Yeah.
around and people are going
Mm.
whole hog on these things. And
Yep.
these are not inexpensive vehicles. These are big money
No.
trucks.
No, all of them. And the funny thing is that the Ford Raptor is the cheap one. Like if you compare it to the Bison ZR2,
Yeah.
that's $65,000. The
What?
Gladiator Mojave I just had is about
Is it really?
$67,000. Yeah. Now it's the Mojave X, so it's the one with the nicer interior, but it's still a Jeep Gladiator. I mean, it's like
60. God, you know what? I still every time we talk about this, and we're in the industry.
it's
I
like you're
shouldn't
like
get
the prices.
I still get blown away when we talk about prices like this because I look at it and I'm like, $67,000 for a Jeep
But
Gladiator
here's the
pickup
thing
truck.
too. It's like the Ranger Raptor at $57,000 has a twin turbo V6 with 405
It's a
horsepower.
bargain.
The Chevy has a 4-cylinder turbo. Like it's missing 2 cylinders. And then
Right.
even the Jeep came with a standard 6 with no turbos. It was under 300 horsepower. And they're still asking that much money. It's like, oh, that's so much money for A
I
10-year-old
just
engine or 15-year
well,
old engine. I
that's
don't know how long that. It's like a Pentastar or something.
I don't know. I still look at it and the prices to me are still mind-boggling, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. You know, I was reading that the average car payment right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of $738 or something like that.
Oh, I believe it.
But that
Yeah, I
just
mean,
seems
if you
like
buy the Ranger, that I mean, if you buy a Raptor and you pay and you don't do any money down and you just do whatever the loan is they give you, you're going to spend over $1,000 a month on a Raptor. Um, People have disposable income or they just have a higher elevation. I think a lot of it comes down to people spend so much time commuting these days. They don't want to
yeah,
commute in a crap box, basically. It's like
yeah,
you want the amenities, you want the CarPlay, you want the decent stereo because you're
sure,
sitting in that car all the time.
yeah,
In my case, it's for like interstate travel. And of course, I review cars. So I'm constantly buying new
of
cars and
course,
selling. As much as I love that Raptor, I'm not going to keep it forever. I mean, I'll switch it
right.
up with something else fairly soon. Um, but
Well,
it is, I think, one of the best trucks I've ever driven. It's nuts. Like
okay,
you think about the price, but then you think about electronically controlled suspension, and then you think twin turbo V6, and then it has a front locker and a rear locker. It comes with BFG KO3 tires. You can't even compromise. They don't even compromise on the tires. Whereas,
yeah,
like, I think Toyota is including either they have like these knockoff, I call them knockoff Wild Peaks. They're actually made by Falcon, but they have less
yeah,
tread than the actual ones. I mean,
okay,
like so many car makers do so many shortcuts on these things and then
yeah,
still ask a massive price.
yeah.
They didn't do that with the Raptor. And I
Well,
think it's an
what?
anomaly. I think they're going to up the price because they came out with the pricing of that truck before everybody else had their pricing on their high-end special editions and everybody
Yeah.
else came so much higher. I don't see Ford keeping it at 57K. They're probably going to bump it up to 60, I think. That's
Well,
just a guess. I don't actually know that.
what was crazy was that when I drove yours, I was
Hmm.
blown away because here's the thing, right? I mean, we're used to driving, most people know that I'm a muscle car guy, big V8 guy.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, the Raptor, the twin turbo six, it was, yes, you have a different sound, but
Mhm.
what you have is we cruised that truck 90 miles an hour. That
Mhm.
truck didn't blink, it didn't struggle up a grade, down a grade. It was, aside from being astonishingly comfortable, okay?
Yeah.
So you can click off a 5, 6, 700 mile day in this truck. It's not going to beat you up. The cabin is quiet,
No problem.
right?
I mean, I drove
You
it from Seattle to San
right,
Francisco and back. And when I drove it back, that was one shot, 12 hours, no big deal.
right.
I got out of my truck, got onto my lawnmower and mowed my lawn because I was fine.
Yeah. But
Which,
I
by
mean
the way,
that
takes me an hour and a half to do because I have a big lawn.
but that just goes to say, they are becoming that much more efficient and that much better as far as performance goes and stuff like that. And so you do
Yeah.
have to take that into the price equation,
Yeah.
where if you could say, yes, well, that's a lot of money and it is a lot of money. But if you were to try to do that 20 years ago in an F-150,
Honestly, I would even say 5 years ago, the seat tech
yeah,
has gotten so much better
yeah,
with the adoption of the new materials, new support, actually like figuring out how heads move and bobble while you're
yeah,
driving, which tires out your eye line and all that kind of all these little things, plus adaptive cruise control and all these other
yeah,
add-ons that they've included, make these long hauls so much easier. And
yeah.
when you can do it in a car that, has 405 horsepower, the benefit of that is you're basically at 1200 RPM the whole
Yeah, you
time.
just because that's got a 10-speed transmission, correct?
Yeah, 10 speed
Yeah,
10 speed
yeah,
transmission. So it's loafing the whole time. You
yeah.
don't get this high buzz. Like if you're in a RAV4, it'd be like the whole
Right,
time.
right,
Which is, RAV4s are great for certain things. Interstate travel is not exactly what I would pick for a
right,
RAV4, but
right.
I'd pick a Land Cruiser. But maybe it's just
Okay.
me.
Well, let's shift to that really quick. I want to jump to
Sure.
the Land Cruiser because Ryan actually has a test. Now, the Land Cruiser and the Forerunner are two of the most talked about vehicles that have come out in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Ryan has a was it first edition or 1958 edition?
I have a 1958 edition from Fleet here. I have on
Right.
order a first edition, which is held up in port for some reason.
Okay, so let's talk about the 1958 edition because
Hmm.
that's the one that is kind of
This is the
the
entry level. Yeah,
it's
they
the
have three
entry level
trims.
one. Talk about how entry level this is and
It is.
what
It is.
$57,000 gets you.
You
Go
remember
ahead.
when you bought? So I can actually tie this into trucks. Remember when you bought a base trim truck even a decade
Yes,
ago?
correct.
That was That was brutal. That
Oh, it was
was hard
plastic
plastics,
everywhere,
vinyl
not comfortable.
seats,
Yep.
garbage, but it was a
Base.
truck and it did truck things. And you could truck that truck without
Yeah.
worrying. It was cheap inside, so you don't worry about
Sure.
scratching or anything like that. So take that idea and apply it to a Land Cruiser. Now, the Land Cruiser is not known for being a luxurious interior ride. It's a utility vehicle around the
Well,
world that they use for delivering aid to countries that have undergone tornadoes and stuff.
right, but here in America, the final generation Land Cruisers were Luxo. They were totally
Yes.
luxury.
And
Total luxury.
$90,000. And not only was it
Correct.
luxury, it was decade-old luxury. So it had like
Correct.
the faux plastics that didn't even, as the faux metal plastics that didn't even vaguely look like metal,
Right.
but they were like
Right.
silver. And you're like, I think I had a transformer that had that same plastic on it. The 1958 is very sparse. It has a lot of hard plastics. The door panels are hard plastic. The dash, hard plastic. The seats are fabric. There aren't even power adjustments on the seats. It's
Really?
ratchet and slider. Yeah, it's like, whoa, they really went cheap here. But funny thing, they have seat warmers and they have fabrics that, though they are textiles that are very industrial, they actually, you look at it and you're like, you look at these and like, they're comfortable seats. And these seats will put up with 100,000 miles and they won't tear because they're very, very thick fabric. So you're like, nothing about this feels like it's going to fall apart. It all feels very solid. It's just the textures and the materials super cheap. But you don't drive around stroking your dashboard,
Right. So this is
the steering wheel is wrapped in a nice leather-like material, and the shifter is a nice leather. So everything actually that you touch with your hands feels very high quality. So it's kind of this weird mix. It's like if you're not touching it, they're going to go as cheap as possible.
But for $57K,
yeah,
is it too much for a base vehicle?
If they buried all of the buttons into the touchscreen, which is what everybody is doing in the world right now, I would say yes, but they don't. Instead, they give you a small infotainment screen and buttons galore. There's nothing you can't do without a button push in that vehicle. Climate control, seat warmers.
Which is nice.
Even if you're adjusting like all the safety features, those are actually using steering wheel controls with your gauge cluster. They're not like diving through these menus trying to figure out what is. And of course, they include all the safety stuff. They actually have this new feature, which I had to turn off immediately, where when you're driving the car, so I started driving this, I'm like, this is pretty nice, whatever. And I noticed that when the car in front of me would put its brakes on, the truck would put the Land Cruiser would put its brakes on before I put the brakes on. And I was like, is this thing driving for me? And it kind of does. It has like this very little amount of like self-driving that's on by default. Now you can turn it off. I found the option to turn it off, and it does not re-enable when you start the car up. It actually shuts it off. It's a new feature that they've been putting on some of these new Toyotas. It is really weird when you don't know that it's doing it though. You're like, why is it slowing down in a corner? I didn't lift off the throttle. Why is it braking? I didn't brake. Why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? Why is it centering on all my, and it's like, oh, new feature off.
Yeah.
But see, so even though they've cheaped out on everything, it is fully loaded with. It has the same 4-cylinder hybrid powertrain that every other Land Cruiser. You can spend 80 grand on a Land Cruiser, same powertrain.
Same motor.
It has rear locker. It has crawl control. Does not have MTS though, which is whatever. It has an infotainment system, though it's tiny. Of course, seat warmers and all that kind of power. It has AC power in the back. I mean, it kind of has all the options that you actually need or want in a new vehicle, but just they cheaped out on everything else. Oh, it's also funny because in the US, you cannot get a 3-row Land Cruiser, but they didn't even bother to change where the third row would go. There's still cup holders in the back section and USB-C sockets right where they would be if you had seats back there. So you can tell that's also kind of, it's kind of cheaping out, but on the other hand, you now have 2 USB-C sockets in the back trunk area, which is kind of nice actually, and some bins to put stuff.
So let me ask you, because I think the Land Cruiser for one and the Forerunner too, right?
Mhm.
You know, they have become, and this is a base truck, not a lot of accoutrements in there, things like
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
But again, I still go back to price at $57,000. Do
Love
you
life.
think that there is a space for a stripper model, meaning, you know,
Like for a
something
Land
where
Cruiser?
for a Land Cruiser or the Forerunner for that is when I say basic, I'm talking power windows and air conditioning, cloth seats,
Mhm.
no infotainment, or if they do have infotainment, fine, just like the one
Well,
in
they
Land Cruiser.
have to have infotainment because it's federally mandated to have backup cameras. So you
Okay.
have to have a screen in there anyway. It's going to be, you just don't want it to be blank the whole time. So it's going to be
But
something.
but do you think that there is a market for that for the
Well,
basis
I think
base
that you
truck?
could look at, they usually have a fairly inexpensive entry level Forerunner of some kind. That's like a
Yeah.
two-wheel drive with,
Yeah.
and they still have an automatic because that's what sells in that category.
Sure.
Most people don't want a manual Forerunner. You're the exception, Mike. Um, but fabric seats, no off-road, like no MTS, no crawl control,
Right.
none of that kind of stuff. They'll have one of those. And what are they going for right now? Like 40 or something like that, I
Oh, no,
think.
they're I think they're 45. They're not cheap. A
No,
44?
45 was an off-road. That was the off-road
No, 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 no,
version. Because
no.
I paid
They're
45 for my 2021 off-road.
hang on.
Um,
Now I gotta get
okay.
to
Now,
Toyota
now,
site then.
now this is the podcast of listening to people Google things.
Well, it is. Well, because now it's just gonna annoy me.
Yeah, exactly. Forerunner. Okay, I'm going to the site. Yeah,
Forerunner.
they start at
It
40. They start at
starting at
40,000.
40,000. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
because an off-road one is upper mid 40s, so
Yeah.
45 I think is the current thing. When they come
See,
out with the new ones, they'll probably keep the base price around 40ish, I would think, but then they'll elevate the pricing on all the other options just to kind of
so
keep
do
the price on the lower side.
so here's a question for you. Do
Yeah.
you think sales of the 2024 Forerunner at starting at 40 grand are going to go up?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of people because you're moving to the hybrid powertrain well, you have either the Turbo 4 on the base trim Forerunners or you have the hybrid. Either way, you're dealing with a turbo motor. I think there's a certain amount of people who buy the Forerunner because if you have a Forerunner, it will last forever. And the reason it'll last forever is because it's 25-year-old tech. They have fixed everything that could be fixed in this truck. And it's
Right.
based on a 4-liter 6-cylinder engine, which will run forever.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple engine design, compared to these hybrid turbos that are coming out now. So because of that, I think that there's definitely a huge audience. Even my audience online, I've had some
Oh
people
yeah.
comment saying that, oh, now that I know what the new Forerunner is, I just went out and bought a TRD Pro of the old one because
Right.
that's what I want. And it's like, okay, that's cool. I get that. But
Yeah.
having driven like the new Land Cruiser, which is the same chassis and basic design as the new Forerunner, and driven the old Forerunner, I mean, it's night and day in handling. I mean, I hate to say it, but the new ones are way better.
Right.
Does that make the old one bad? No, it doesn't. But it's a different driving experience. It's like the old Forerunner is definitely like driving an old truck. You put the brakes
Right.
on, you get a lot of brake dive. You
Yeah.
turn, there's a lot of this uncontrolled body roll.
Yeah.
It's an off-roader with
Sold.
most of the downsides of an off-roader. Yeah. But it's not as bad as a Wrangler, because Wranglers have their own, because they're solid axles front and back. So they're definitely
Yeah.
a lot wonkier on the freeway. So it's the Forerunner has an acceptable amount of wonkiness that I think can be easily passed off as character. And it kind of does create character in
Mhm.
the vehicle. Yeah, you can drive it and then you let your wife drive it and she's like, I don't like this. And you're like, that's right, because it's a special kind of character,
Right.
It's like,
Right. Right. Right.
which is okay. I
Yeah.
really enjoy, honestly, like if they had not come out with the Land Cruiser this year. And so I had a Forerunner in 2021, TRD
Yeah, you did.
off-road.
Yep.
Love
Nice
that
truck.
truck. If they pushed the Forerunner one more year, if they pushed the Land Cruiser one more year, both of these things got delayed because of the pandemic. I might have actually gone out and just bought a TRD Pro Forerunner because I
Right.
like them so much. It's like,
Yeah.
well, they're not going to come out with a new one, but unfortunately, my show is about new
No, you're based on
vehicles.
new vehicles. Yeah.
Viewers
Yeah.
want to see the new stuff, and honestly, I really like the new stuff. So,
Sure.
I mean, I have kids. They want seat heaters in the second row. They're spoiled. I'm not
Right.
gonna lie about that.
Of course. No, I did well,
So,
and that's just it. I mean, you do get spoiled. It's just I always go back to like how much is this really gonna cost, and when you talk about
mhm.
longevity and stuff. Like I'm a big fan of reliability, and you look now and
Reliability is going to
they've
be a
get
big question mark on these new high-strung four-cylinder turbos. The
yeah
one thing I'm going to give like Toyota a pass on is the fact that they have millions of miles of hybrid tech under their belts.
they
If
no
anybody's
when you talk about hybrid, Toyota
Yeah,
is kind
yeah,
of the
and
mecca.
so I think that the electric power side of these new Land Cruisers and Forerunners is going to take a lot of the strain off of that four-cylinder turbo. I kind of worry more about, and this isn't based on any actual numbers, it's just kind of one of those gut feelings. I kind
Sure.
of wonder about like the Chevy Colorado that's pushing like close to 400 horsepower out of a four-cylinder turbo. I'm kind of like, I mean, they say they've gone through all the cycles, but I'm like all the test cycles to show that it's as durable as the old, six. In fact, it's as durable as a diesel, they say. But I'm just like,
Dude,
ah.
I always question that. I mean, if you look at what manufacturers do anytime they come out with a new engine configuration, right? The first couple of years are always crap. They just are. I mean, I remember when
Toyota just recalled 100,000 Tundras
well,
because but actually it's weird because that one wasn't really a design issue. It was a manufacturing issue. There's debris in the engines that are causing early death of the motors. So it's not actually like the design of it. It was the manufacturing of it. And that's kind
right,
of
but
weird.
it is, but in the same token, it's still a Toyota, right? And
Yeah.
you and I are
Toyota's
different
going to
because
fix or replace every single one of those. You know it. I mean, they're
they,
like,
they they absolutely will. But that's
yeah.
when it comes to things like anytime a new motor comes out, right? When you talk about, I remember when the Colorado came out, I had the 5 cylinder, and everybody was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, it's going to be great!" Or, you know, uh, Chrysler introduced the Eco Diesel, and they were like, "It's great," and then all of a sudden, it's around for 3 years, and then it's gone because you know what? Wasn't that great? You know what I
That
mean?
is great.
Not great. So, when you talk about a 4 cylinder, that's trying to do pickup truck things,
hmm
even with the
And
turbos,
spinning 35-inch wheels,
dude,
tires, 35-inch tires.
it's gonna be running so hard
Uh-huh.
to do
Uh-huh.
stuff where a big twin turbo V6 or a stock V6 or a stock V8 is just an under stress thing that's just not working that hard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm I look at stuff and now especially I think they were saying that the average consumer keeps a car now for 12 years,
Yep.
right? That's a long time. 12 years, 10,000 miles a year, minimum 120, 140,000 miles on these things. It's not
You're going to
like
be
it
replacing
was.
turbos, if nothing else. I mean, that's at least
Oh,
one turbo swap out of that period of time.
yeah. So should we say get the extended warranty?
Uh, I think a lot of people kind of aspire to not keep a car for 12 years, So like when you're buying it, you don't think extended warranty because you think, well, I'm going to only keep it for, a couple years or a few
See,
years or five
dude,
years.
I think that's an age thing. I used to be like that. Like, I'll get rid of it in like 4 years. Five. Now, when I
Mhm.
buy something, I'm like, I am going to keep this thing till the wheels fall off it, unless
Yeah.
it does something that doesn't totally agree with me or something that I don't like, that I really don't like.
Yeah. But here's my counter to that. And if I was not doing new car shows and driving new cars all the time, I might have settled into that camp. But the fact is that new cars are very exciting. And you know, I've heard you say this kind of stuff, Mike. Okay, I'm gonna go full Musto here.
Yeah,
You only live once,
it's
right?
true.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to spend your time in a car that you hate or you liked once, but your life has changed and now you need something totally different? Well, you know what? Buy what you want. Buy what makes you happy. It doesn't matter how much money it costs. Okay, you would never say that. But anyway, it's like, and I think a lot of people get enjoyment from their
Yeah,
vehicles, and also, I mean, I have to say, there's a certain amount of one-upping your neighbors that I'm sure happens with some
yeah,
of these choices. Like, yeah, you could get a 335i BMW when they made those, or you can get a 350, or you can get
right,
an M. It's
right,
like, are
right,
you
right, right,
actually going to
right,
track the car? Probably not. You shouldn't buy an M, whatever. Buy the 330 because you're commuting. But it's like, no,
right,
350 is practically as good as an M. It's like,
right.
okay. Do you
Yeah,
need the Raptor? No. Are you actually going to ridge run? No. Are you ever going to go off road? No. One thing I
right.
am kind of surprised though is how many, at least out here in the country, how many F-150 Raptors I see first generation. People are still driving them. I kind of expected them to kind of move off. Like,
dude,
I expected those to be a 4-year purchase, but no, here they're still running around. People clearly have had these trucks and they love them.
I saw a first gen 5.4 extended cab, which has got to be a unicorn. Like, because the 5.4,
oh my God, yeah.
the first gen V8, and that was really rare. And they only did that for like 7 minutes. But I saw one running around, and I was gonna go talk to the owner, and then he kind of took off. I was at Home Depot, and I was like, I wanted to be like, how many miles you got on this thing? Because when I see trucks like that, I want to know, are you the first owner or are you the sixth owner?
I know, right? That's a good question.
I don't know.
I've done 5,000 miles with my Raptor, and it's been problem-free.
Well, dude, there is no question that you probably have the highest mile Raptor, the Ranger Raptor in the country right
without
now.
a doubt. Actually, I'm up to 5,300 miles now, but it's been parked ever since I got back from that trip, so haven't driven it since.
So when's the first
Land Cruiser comes in, I'll go put 5,000 miles on the Land Cruiser. So it's really not going to move much. I do have one shoot that I need to do with it next week, so it'll put another 300 miles on it. Just got to keep ahead of everybody else from having as many miles as me.
So let me ask you. So Ryan and I are shooting our tested series for Hemmings next week, or is it next week? No, it's the week after next.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Are you driving back down?
No, I'm flying. And the only reason I'm flying, by the way, it's from Seattle. For those who don't know, Seattle, San Francisco is a 12-hour straight run.
Drive.
If you don't stop for bathroom and gas. So it usually ends up about 13 hours, 14 hours. I am not, because we wrap shooting on Friday and my daughter graduates high school on Saturday. So physically there was no way for me to get back in time for the graduation, because it's at like 1:00. So we're finished filming. I'm running to the airport. I'm flying home that night. I'll be home at like 2 a.m. It's going to suck, but
it is what it is.
My daughter's only going to graduate once. So
that's correct. No, you got to be there for those things. Well, I don't think we solved the world's problems on this episode, but we did have
I think we did.
Oh, you think that's it? So everything's good now?
That's it. Buy a new truck, because they're awesome.
Well, there you go. So Ryan, thanks as always for joining. Folks, we're going to cut this one a little short, just because we
ended up 45 minutes, so that's about normal.
Oh, no, that's about normal. Okay. But yeah, so obviously if you are looking for a pickup truck, if you're looking for that used pickup truck or that used classic collectible vehicle, go to Hemmings.com, check out our classifieds, our auction, and obviously our make offer pages. If you have any comments on this episode or pickup trucks or trucks in general, throw it in the comments. Ryan and I will absolutely take a look at it and see if we can answer your questions for you. Otherwise, that's it. See you next time on the Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.